Hello, everyone. Very good morning. Uh, Thank you for taking your time and joining in today's session. Before we begin the session, I just want to do a quick sound check. If everybody can kindly reply in the Q&A or the chat, if you can hear me clearly, can you confirm if you are able to hear the presenter clearly, uh, so that we can make sure everybody can listen and hear me, and we will be good to start the session. We'll give the attendees a couple more minutes to join, and then we'll get started uh, on today's session. So while you're waiting, please do let me know if you can hear me loud and clear. If you're unable to hear me, please do let me know in the chat or the Q&A panel or Q&A window, and one of us will get in touch with you. Wonderful. I see everybody is able to hear me loud and clear. That's good to know. We'll just give another minute for the attendees to join, and then we'll get started. Also, during the session, if you have any questions, feel free to use both the chat and the Q&A. They are being monitored. I will be reviewing the questions during the session and also towards the end of the session. The session also has some questions and a prize for grab. So do participate, and hoping that one of you would get the right answers and win the prize. So we'll just give another minute for everybody to join in. Like I said, if you're unable to hear me or have any questions, please do let us know in the chat or the Q&A window. Okay, I think we have a good number of attendees online, so we'll get started. The session is being recorded, so the recording will be shared with you post the session along with the slides that I've used for this particular session. So let's get it rolling. So before we start, a quick introduction about myself. My name is Roshan. I work with Ingram Micro as a solution architect. I'm based in Melbourne. I primarily look after the Microsoft Cloud platform. My expertise is around Microsoft Azure. I have worked on other Microsoft technologies such as SharePoint, SQL, and Microsoft 365 or Office 365. I primarily work in the pre-sales area of a project. But having said that, I do take up smaller size projects as implementation projects, which let's say can be completed in a couple of weeks' time, is something that I get involved in and help partners deliver the project. So going forward, if you have any questions on Microsoft Cloud, I do have knowledge on AWS and a couple of backup and disaster products. So if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on my email address or Twitter. I'll be more than happy to get in touch with you and hopefully answer them. So today's session is on Windows 365 versus Azure Virtual Desktop. So it's two offerings from Microsoft, which in many ways are similar. It has its own differences. So today we'll be talking about what are the similarities and differences between these two technologies. What's the reason behind these two technologies? I'm sure everybody has had some impact of this pandemic. They've had people working from different locations, and they've had customers now actually asking people to work certain days from office, certain days from home or from outside office. So I think remote work will be a normal work style in the future. When you have remote work or hybrid work, for IT, it is very important that they provide secure access to the organization data. They make it less painful, less impactful for the users, and make it easy for them to access and use the tools and technologies to get their work done. Uh, that is where Microsoft is investing a lot of their time, money, and effort. We've seen technologies like Windows 365, Azure Virtual Desktop, but not only these. If you also look at the way they're growing, their Windows 11 platform introducing more and more functionalities around Teams, so that it becomes easy for users to communicate with each other. The way they are integrating security offerings around these remote work technologies, it's very clear that uh, hybrid work will be the future of work, and also uh, Microsoft is looking forward to having Windows 365 and Azure Virtual Desktop adoption being taken up by a lot of MSPs. So the first technology that we'll look into is Windows 365. Now, Windows 365 uh, is a newer offering when you compare it with Azure Virtual Desktop. So what is Windows 365? Windows 365 is a way of streaming Windows 10 or now Windows 11 to any device, right? So think of it as an operating system delivered on your iPad or on your Android device. So it's the entire Windows experience that you can give to any user on any device. That is what Windows 365 is. It's very simple and easy to set up. So in today's session, we do have demos where I'll show you how quickly and easy it is to set up and provide your users a true Windows experience. And it supports hybrid workspace, which means they can access this cloud PC from any device, from any location, whether they are in office, whether they're working from cafe or from home. They can access the same Windows 10 or Windows 11 cloud PC and continue to do their job. Each cloud PC is assigned to an individual user and it becomes their dedicated Windows device. So this is not a shared environment. Each PC that gets created as part of Windows 365 is a dedicated service. So uh, it means that each user gets dedicated resources, get dedicated shared, get dedicated storage, RAM, CPU. So it's not impacted by the number of users logging in, right? So it's a dedicated PC given to each and every user, and this PC is being streamed from cloud, from Microsoft Cloud. Last but not the least, it's a fixed price per user per month, right? So no matter if the user uses it 2 hours a day, 24 hours a day, it's a fixed per user per month price. So it becomes a very predictable costing for the customer, for the MSP as well. There are different editions in Windows 365. There are two editions in broad. We have Windows 365 Business and Windows 365 Enterprise. Now, just a quick note, if you are an MSP, I'm sure everybody on this call is an MSP, you can manage uh, multiple Windows 365 subscriptions or multiple cloud PCs across multiple customers using Microsoft 365 Lighthouse. Now, if you're not aware what Microsoft 365 Lighthouse is, it's a service provided by Microsoft which lets you use a single pane of glass to manage multiple M365 subscriptions. If you'd like to know more, the next session is on M365 Lighthouse. Please do register and join to get more insights about the service, how to use and configure it. So just taking a step back, Windows 365 has two editions, Business and Enterprise. Going forward, we'll look into each of these editions. What are the features, differences, demo of these. Let's start off with Windows 365 Business. So Windows 365 Business, you could potentially compare it with Microsoft 365 Business. So especially in terms of licensing, right? So it's designed for small to medium-sized companies with a maximum of 300 desktops. So if you have a customer with 200 users who are looking to have similar to a Windows 365 PC for each and every one of their end users, then Windows 365 Business is an option for them. Now here, Azure AD, without an Azure AD, virtual network support is provided. What this means is the virtual network is completely managed and maintained by Microsoft. You don't have to create any network. You don't have to deal with any of the networking components when it comes to Windows 365 Business. Now, when it comes to bandwidth, right, there are certain bandwidth charges that Microsoft gives out of the box. So there are different SKUs available within Windows 365 Business. In the next coming slides, I'll show you where you can look at the different SKUs available. You have a 2 GB RAM, 4 8 GB, 16 GB, and the 32 GB RAM machines. Now, each of them have their own outbound data traffic defined, right? So in the table, you can see for 2 GB, there's about 12 GB outbound data per month. 30 GB has about 70 GB of outbound data traffic made possible. Now, when you assign a user with Windows 365 Business, that user becomes a local admin of that Windows PC. Okay, which means he can install and configure things. He can download items from internet. So by default, each user who gets a Windows 365 Business gets a cloud, becomes a local administrator. Now, there is integration with Intune available with Cloud PC, especially the Windows 365 Business. Sorry. Okay. There is integration with Intune. So especially if you'd like to manage the images and deploy applications, if your customer, I think I'm sharing the wrong screen. Let me reshare it. Just a second. Yes. Are we back? Yeah, this is the screen we were in. Okay. Sorry for that. I think I pressed the wrong key on the keyboard. So, like I was saying, Windows 365 Business has Intune support. So, if you'd like to manage images, application deployment, it is still possible, but you will need to have the right Intune license or the right combination of M365 license, such as E3, E5, or a business premium. Right? There is limited device management capabilities. For example, there is not a lot of monitoring that you can do on this Windows 365 Business, right? You can still go ahead and provide conditional access. Conditional access is now becoming another norm. After multi-factor authentication, conditional access is another feature, a security feature that strongly recommend each and every MSP to implement. And now you can also implement that with Windows 365 Business, again, having the right license, right? So as you see, if you have a customer who uses, let's say, a business premium or an E1 or E3 license, then he could potentially consume a lot of features which he already has as part of Microsoft 365 Business Premium with Windows 365 and deliver a more holistic solution. So let's jump on to the demo and let's see how we can get Windows 365 up and running. So let me go ahead, bring in my browser on screen, and we go ahead and share the screen. Okay. So again, if you're unable to see the screen sharing, please do let us know. You should be seeing the management portal for M365. Okay. So again, please feel free to use the chat or the Q&A panel to let us know if you have any questions or issues in the screen share. So to get started, Windows 365, whether it is business or enterprise, starts with a license assignment, right? So it's as simple as purchasing the license from Ingram Micro Cloud Marketplace. We spoke about SKUs, so let's look at the SKUs first. Business SKUs. So if we look at the different plans, you will see there are a lot of plans which is offered by Microsoft. It's not one size fit all kind of a scenario. They do have multiple options available. So if I look at compare business, so as you see, there's a 2-core 4 GB machine, there's a 2-core 8 GB machine, there's a 4-core 16 GB machine. So there are different options available to choose from, right? So once you choose this, then and assuming, let's say you go ahead and purchase one of these licenses will be available within your cloud platform or within your, within your M365 platform. So if you go to active users, right, and let's say if I go to one of the users, which is Hulk here, so if I go to this user, I can go ahead and assign a license for this particular user, right? So here, as you can see, if I go to license and apps, I will have all the licenses which I have purchased available. Now, first, let's talk about the business plan. As soon as you assign a license of the business plan, the license will go ahead provision the required PC with the mentioned spec for the particular user. So, for example, I've already assigned license to Black Panther and Iron Man. So let's open Black Panther here, and as you can see, this person has the Windows 365 Business. So Windows 365 Business is simple, easy, quick to deploy. Purchase the license, assign the license, and the user is good to log in. So when a user logs in, so let me go ahead and bring in another browser here. Make sure you're able to see screen sharing. Okay, so here, if I go to windows365.microsoft.com, so this is the URL. Now, there are multiple ways to access the cloud PC. One option is to use browser. Second option is you can also use a client. I'll also show you the client in a minute. Let me log in with another user here. We log in with Iron at club. So once the user logs in, this is how the experience will be, right? So this is the license assigned to him. He can not do a lot of things, but a couple of things. He can restart, he can reset, he can rename, troubleshoot. Troubleshoot is primarily if he's unable to access that particular cloud PC for whatever reason, right? He can say, yes, troubleshoot this PC. There's a default script that Microsoft has written, which will get started, and he should be able to troubleshoot it. If he clicks on open in browser, it will just open up in the browser here. This is one way to access the cloud PC. The other way is to use this client. Now, this is a remote desktop client. It's not the same RDP client. If you just do a quick search for remote desktop client. Now, this client is available from this browser here. So you can download from here, or if you're using it on iOS or Android, you can get the link from this location as well, right? Now, once you download, sign in, you will see the Windows Cloud PC here. Now, the naming can be changed. Again, this is another way where he can use a client to log in. Now, of course, the way you access from a client is definitely much faster, much smoother experience. Browser completely depends on the browser that they're using. Any HTML5 browser is supported, right? So you can use Chrome, Safari, Mozilla, Edge. Any of these browsers are supported. Okay. So let me jump back to the slides here and see if there are any questions. Before I jump on to enterprise, let me quickly check if there are any questions. In business enterprise, we are trying to lock down computers so that users cannot install apps at random. How is this managed in Windows 365 environment? Okay, so the question is, they're trying to lock down the apps which they can use. Here you will have to use Intune. That's the preferred option. So with Intune, you can do app deployment and image management for both Windows 365 Business and Enterprise. Now, do remember that I said each user with business who gets assigned business by default becomes a local admin. That doesn't mean you cannot remove him from a local administrator. By default, he becomes, you can always go ahead and uh, you know, change that and make him a standard user and control the apps that he can access. I hope that answers your question. So next is features on Windows 365 Enterprise. So in Windows 365 Enterprise, again, you can compare this with M365 Enterprise, right? So it's designed for all businesses. There's no limit on the number of users. You can start with one, go up to 50,000. So you can go ahead and bring in any number of licenses or users as part of this particular feature, this particular option. Now, when it comes to network, now this is a big change that Microsoft has done recently. Earlier, when you had Windows 365 Enterprise, you had to use or you had to bring in your own network, which means you had to build a Windows Active Directory and configure a hybrid network between Windows 365 Enterprise and your Active Directory. So there had to be a network between, let's say, you had to create a network in Azure, a virtual network in Azure, which could communicate with Windows Active Directory. You cannot use Azure AD domain services. Last week, on 9th of February, Microsoft actually announced that now it's in public preview where you can use a hosted virtual network by Microsoft, right? This is a hosted pre-made network which already integrates with Azure AD. So now both business and enterprise can run with Azure AD only. You do not need uh, a Windows Active Directory to work with Windows 365 Enterprise. This is a welcome news. It brings it makes it a more cloudified solution, I would say, right? So it becomes more and more 100% cloud solution, so that you don't have to have any on-prem or any Azure components for that matter, right? So that's one thing to remember about Windows 365 Enterprise. Now, Windows 365 Enterprise has more deeper integration with Intune, so you can bring in your own images, you can customize those images. And have it available for the users. By default, each user is not made a local administrator on the cloud PC. You have very detailed analytics of the Windows 365 Enterprise Cloud PC, right from connection to performance to networking. All these various functionalities are available with Windows 365 Enterprise Cloud PC. Again, like business, you can manage end-to-end everything about the Windows 365 enterprise enterprise cloud PC with Intune, right? So what are the requirements for you to use Windows 365 Enterprise? Now, it definitely requires a Windows 365 Enterprise license. You don't need uh, you don't need an Azure subscription anymore. Initially, you required it, but now it's not required anymore. You need a Windows Intune license, especially with Windows 365 Enterprise, so that it is much more manageable for your IT, right? So I would definitely recommend you to use Windows Microsoft Intune for this. Like I said, with respect to network, you can either use Azure hosted network or an on-prem Azure Active Directory. Earlier, I would say 2 weeks before, only the on-prem ADDS was the option. Now, Microsoft has released an update where you could use Azure hosted network. You cannot use Azure AD domain service. That's a frequent question that I always get. Can I use Azure AD domain services with Windows 365 Enterprise? As of now, it's not supported. They may support it in the future, but as of now, it's not. Okay. Now, if you're using an on-prem Azure AD to sync your users and devices to Azure AD, on-prem AD to Azure AD, you will need to use Azure AD Connect. So if you're using this particular option for your current use with Windows 365, then you will need to have an Azure AD Connect. Right? If you use Azure AD hosted network, then you do not need Azure. Right? So just to keep in mind. Okay, so let's get started with a demo on Windows 365 Enterprise. So let me make sure again screen sharing is working as expected. Over here. So when it comes to enterprise, so like I said earlier, you can the first prerequisite is to have the network infrastructure ready, right? Either you use the hosted or you use the on-prem Active Directory. Now, since this feature was recently released, it's in preview. Unfortunately, it's not yet available in my portal, right? So I already have an on-prem network connection. So I have a virtual machine in my Azure, which is acting as an Active Directory. I've created a virtual network that connects the Windows 365 enterprise network to my Azure AD. So that is up and running, but very soon you will have an option under provisioning policies. You will see an option where it's under the network, you'll not just see on-prem network connection, you'll also see Azure AD hosted. Let me actually bring up that article so that I can share with you on the chat here. Azure AD, I think this should be on this is so here we go. So this was announced on 9th, yeah, like I said last week. So now currently, if you see in my provisioning policy, I only get the option of selecting hybrid AD. I do not see the option of joint type and multiple options here, right? So under provisioning, I just see one option. So this feature is in preview. So what this means is now you can basically have all your cloud PCs with Azure AD and have more of a perfect cloud solution or a complete cloud solution. Right? But if you have customers who are in that hybrid setup where they have a couple of servers running on-prem using Azure AD Connect to sync users to Azure, then you can always use this option where you can connect your on-prem Active Directory with Windows 365. So as simple as going ahead and creating a connection, making sure this virtual network has connectivity between your on-prem and Azure. It can be the virtual network that has the site-to-site VPN. So those options are very much available even now. So Microsoft is not removing the hybrid, they are giving you an additional option. Either use the hybrid or use the Azure Ready Hosted. Okay. Once you have this provisioning done, if you go back, so let me go back here and let me assign Hulk license. So the way provisioning happens with Windows 365 Enterprise is slightly different, right? So as soon as you assign a license, a cloud PC doesn't get created quickly, or that is not created as fast as business. Once you assign a license, this is one of the licenses that's available, like it's saved. What it does is it actually goes ahead and starts creating another provisioning policy. It is all automated. Once you have this action and provisioning policies all created, in a couple of minutes, you will see there is another provisioning policy that gets created for this particular user, and his license, his Windows 365 Enterprise will start working as expected. So this is all happening in the background. It's important for MSPs or the IT people to know about it. For the end user, all he needs to do is just use a browser login. So this is Iron Man. Let me log out here and log in as the user with the license of enterprise heroes.club. Actually, this is the password. Yeah, this is the password. So this is another user that has enterprise license. Again, like you see, he can do a couple of things here. And if he clicks on open in browser, it's the same experience. It's the same Windows 10 experience. Now, another enhancement which Microsoft has done is allowing this alternate keyboard layout. So now multiple language keyboards are supported. And also with Windows 365 Enterprise, you can get localization support as well. That's also something that is made now possible with Enterprise. So from the look of it, when you compare business and enterprise, so far we have seen many of our partners choosing enterprise over business just because it provides more features, functionalities, capabilities for the users, right? So this is how the Windows 10 looks like. So I've opened it in the browser. It's as simple as running a Windows 10 PC, right? So it has all my Office apps already installed, Teams up and running, OneDrive, everything configured and good to go. Okay, so let me sign out from here and let me go back to my slides and see if you have any questions before we proceed to the next topic. Questions. So do you have any questions on Windows 365 Business or Enterprise? Like I said, Business is very similar to M365 Business. Windows Enterprise is very similar to M365 Enterprise. Windows Enterprise has much more options. So yeah. Are there any SKUs for non-for-profit? That's a good question. I will need to check and get back to you. I'm not 100% sure if there are any license for non-for-profit, but I'll have to check. I'm not aware as of now. I'll check and get back to you. So if you could just drop me an email on my email address, I'll double check and get back to you. Any other questions on Windows 365 Business or Enterprise before we jump on to Azure Virtual Desktop? Okay, so I don't see any questions coming up, so I'll proceed. Like I said, if you do have any questions, feel free to use the chat and we'll go ahead and answer them. So next, we'll look at what is Azure Virtual Desktop. So Azure Virtual Desktop is similar to Windows 365, but this is a desktop as a service and app as a service offering from Microsoft Azure, right? So it's a very Azure driven solution. It can deliver multi-user Windows 10 and Windows 11 experience. So this is another big difference when you compare Windows 365 and Azure Virtual Desktop. Azure Virtual Desktop, think of it as an enhanced version of remote desktop server, right? So when we talk about remote desktop server, we look at terminal server, session broker, gateway, right? But the fundamental logic is you have one big fat server and multiple users are logging into it. So that is where Azure Virtual Desktop plays. Uh, it is providing you the functionality where you can provision a high-spec server and have multiple users log into it. Whereas Windows 365 is one PC to one user. Okay. You can manage user profiles using FS Logic. FS Logic is a brilliant software which Microsoft acquired several years ago, which helps you manage your profile. It helps you create profile containers, store it outside the session host or the terminal server for better management and usability. It's very well integrated with Microsoft 365 security features, right from Intune, multi-factor authentication, conditional access, all the way up to even Azure Defender, right? All those features and functionalities are integrated, can be integrated with Azure Virtual Desktop. You can have pooled and personal. Pooled means you can have a high-spec server and multiple users logging in. Personal means you can have one server for a particular user. So you can have both of them in a single customer infrastructure. So let's say if you have a customer of 35 users, there is a CFO, there is a CIO, and or a CFO and a CEO, right? So you want to give dedicated resources to the CEO and CFO, but for the remaining users, you want them to use the shared architecture or the shared platform. So you can have a combination of pooled and personal within a company, or you can just have pooled or just personal, right? So any combination is possible. It's simple and quick to deploy. It definitely takes a little more effort than Windows 365 Enterprise. Windows 365 Enterprise, as you saw, you create the network and you assign the license. Here, you have more control. You can select what operating system, what apps to deploy, how you want to scale your virtual desktop and things like this, which we'll be seeing in the upcoming slides. So quickly looking at the architecture, right? So there are certain things that are managed by Microsoft. There are certain things that you have to configure. So the section which is highlighted in blue is managed by Microsoft. So you don't have to worry about deploying a gateway, diagnostic session broker, or a SQL database. All you worry about is deploying a session host on desktops, right? The terminal server. So you determine whether you want to provide VDI, virtual desktop, or you want to provide remote app, or both. Where and how is your Active Directory being used, whether you want to use Azure AD domain services, whether you want to just use Azure AD, or you want to use an on-prem Active Directory. So there are more options available with Azure Virtual Desktop. And finally, how would you like to manage your FS logic, or how would you like to manage your user profile, right? So that is what you decide and configure. How do clients access? Clients still use the same app. They can either use a browser, or they can use the remote desktop client, the same client which I used for Windows 365 Enterprise and Business. That's the same client that they can use for Azure Virtual Desktop. So quickly looking at advanced features, it works with Azure AD, Azure AD domain services, and now with just Azure AD, right? So now even Azure Virtual Desktop is slowly becoming a pure cloud solution, right? You can have just Azure AD use with Azure Virtual Desktop and provide desktop as a service or app as a service to your customers. MSIX app attached. This is the next revolution when it comes to application virtualization or application delivery. With this feature, you can potentially start providing app as a service. You can in many ways convert a client server app into appearing as a software as a service application to your end customers using MSIX app attached. Screen capture protection is possible. RDP short path. RDP short path minimizes the latency between the client or between the end user and the session host itself, right? So if you have a direct connectivity, let's say you have a site-to-site VPN with Azure, RDP short path will reduce the latency from, let's say, 50 milliseconds all the way up to 5 milliseconds, right? So it becomes more or less like a LAN when you implement artificial path. It's integrated with Azure Advisor. Azure Advisor is a, you can think of it as an artificial intelligence governance system within Azure. It's a free service which actually checks your Azure and provides you recommendations with size, with performance, with costing. So now it also supports and understands Azure Virtual Desktop. Start on Connect is a wonderful feature where you can have all the servers in a shutdown mode, and as soon as the user connects, the server starts, right? You can have another option where when all the users log off, you can automatically stop the server, right? So this helps you save cost. Auto scaling functionality is available with Azure Virtual Desktop. So let's say if you have a customer of 30 users, you want the servers to start at, let's say, 7:30 in the morning, scale to multiple servers by 8:39 because you have more users logging in. And as the day progresses and as users log off, you want to reduce the number of servers. That is possible with Azure Virtual Desktop. And last but not the least is hybrid. Azure Virtual Desktop is now available on Azure Stack HCI, right? So if you have customers who want Azure but want that Azure experience in an on-prem infrastructure and still use Azure Virtual Desktop, it's very much possible now. So quick comparison between Windows 365 and Azure Virtual Desktop. So Windows 365 is fixed cost per user, right? Per user per month. Azure Virtual Desktop is flexible pricing based on usage. So you can have, let's say, weekdays, more usage, weekends, less usage. You can have uh, more usage during working hours, less usage during non-working hours or off-peak hours. So there are flexible pricing. Windows 365 fixed pricing. Windows 365 networking. I'm sorry, management. You can use Intune, right? You will need to use Intune to manage both enterprise and business. Here you have its own, you can say its own sort of a portal within Azure to manage Windows 365. I'm sorry, Azure Virtual Desktop. Windows personalized desktop, single user desktop only, no remote apps, right? Here, Windows personalized desktop, single user, multi-user OS can publish both desktop and remote apps. User self-service is possible, like you just saw. As soon as the license is assigned, everything is up and running. There's not really native self-service options or straight out of the box. Windows 365 works with Azure AD. It's no more. It's in preview right now and works with Azure AD domain server. Works with Windows Active Directory. Azure AD domain services is not supported here. All three options are now possible. User profiles are stored local. User profiles are stored in a shared location like Azure files or NetApp files. No native backup support for Windows 365. You can use Azure Backup Service here. There's no auto scaling or start on connect option with business. please, if you're interested, please feel free to get in touch with us and we'll help you and support you with it. So if you do a quick cost comparison, as you see, some of the costs of Windows 365 here are available: basic, standard user, premium user with their own specs and storage. This is the unit price, fixed price per month, and this is the Azure Virtual Desktop pricing. So Azure Virtual Desktop, especially if you go ahead and reserve for 3 years, you see much more costing benefit from it. But do remember, at any point of time, Azure Virtual Desktop is still pay as you use sort of a pricing, right? So you'll still have network, you'll still have bandwidth. So there are certain things that will be considered. This is another comparison just showing us how Azure Virtual Desktop compares with Windows 365. So if you end up using personal desktops in Azure Virtual Desktop, it's actually expensive. If you use personal desktop under pay-as-you-go and auto scaling, it's still just 9%. But when you start using pooled desktops, you will see much more difference when compared with Windows 365. Right. So before we end the session, I want to quickly show you a run through of Azure Virtual Desktop. Let me jump on to my Azure portal. Okay, so this is my Azure portal. Like I said, Azure Virtual Desktop is completely, you can say, Azure-driven solution. So if I go to Azure Virtual Desktop, it's a dedicated section there. Did the sound go off? Is everybody still able to hear me clearly? I think I not watch the questions here. Harika, can you confirm if you can hear me loud and clear? And there are a couple of questions saying, can you just repeat the last couple of slides? Sure, I'll go ahead. So before I jump onto the demo, I'll probably go back with slides. So I'll probably cover Windows 360. I'm assuming the Azure Virtual Desktop piece is where it's lost me in sound. So quickly go through this one more time. We'll do a quick run through of it. As I said, Azure Virtual Desktop is an Azure-oriented offering. It offers both desktop and application publishing. It's an enhanced version of remote desktop server, right? So in remote desktop server, you had 5 roles: a gateway, session broker, SQL, diagnostic, and terminal server. With Azure Virtual Desktop, you still have 5 roles, but you don't have to manage and maintain 4 roles. All you have to manage and maintain is your terminal server or your session host, right? That is what provides you the multi-user. And now that terminal server or the session host runs on Windows 10 or Windows 11. User profiles can be stored outside the terminal server by using the concept of FS logic. It's very tightly integrated with Windows 365 licenses, especially Business Premium and higher. You can integrate conditional access, even multi-factor authentication, Defender for cloud. All those options are now integrated. You can have both pooled and personal, which means you can have a machine dedicated for a user, or you can have a high-spec server where multiple users are logging in, right? Simple and quick to deploy, something that we'll cover in our demo. This is the architecture. Here, this section, which is so the middle section is completely managed and maintained by Microsoft. So all these 4 roles, which earlier in RDS you used to deploy on assuming dedicated servers, now you don't have to manage any of this. All you have to deploy is your terminal server, which will host your desktops or your apps or both, right? You have to determine what option of Active Directory would you use, either Azure AD, Windows AD, or Azure AD Domain Services. and then determine how you'll manage your user profile. Now, one question that I get from SMB customers is, should we use FS Logic? Is it mandatory? Answer is no, it is not mandatory. It's definitely recommended, highly recommended, but you can still deploy Azure Virtual Desktop and still host your profiles locally, right? It'll still work, but I would recommend you use the latest technologies that Microsoft has invested in and bringing more and more features into it. So quickly talking about the advanced features, like I said, we can use Azure Windows Active Directory, Azure Active Directory domain services, and now just Azure AD. So this is again a new feature which Microsoft introduced, which brings us to I think my audio was lost again. Why is this happening? Okay. I think there was some issue when I switched the slide. I'll go back to the advanced slide once again, and hopefully you're able to see the screen sharing. Okay. So, Tarika, can you confirm if here? Do you also see this? Are you guys able to hear me clearly? Hello. Can you hear me? Okay. I think now the audio connection is restored. Apologies for that. I'm not sure what's going wrong. The panelist seems to be hearing me clearly, but the attendees are not. Hopefully everybody is able to hear me now. I'm on the slide that says Azure Virtual Desktop Advanced Features. Like I said, Azure Virtual Desktop now works with Azure AD domain services, Windows AD, and just with Azure AD. MSIX app attach lets you deliver applications in a much more streamlined, much more manageable format. It helps you remove the dependency on an operating system and an application. MSIX App Attach actually helps you have a better update management, especially your application update management procedure. You can have screen capture protection. So when a user opens up Azure Virtual Desktop, he cannot use a snipping tool to actually go ahead copy paste from, let's say, the screen of Virtual Desktop onto his image, right? So those things can be protected. RDP short path is a functionality which lets you get faster access to your client. So it makes it more manageable. It makes it less latency intensive. Azure Advisor is a guidance system which provides you more and more guidance on how your virtual desktop is performing. It gives you guidance around costing, high availability, and things like this. It's free service available within Azure. I strongly recommend you to use it. Start on Connect is a wonderful functionality that Microsoft has introduced. It's very useful where you have users who use PCs in standard working time, right? From 8 to 5 sort of a scenario, 8 to 6 sort of a scenario. So in that scenario, you can have the server shut down in the morning. As soon as the user connects, the server starts, right? So it gives you a lot of cost saving. Auto scaling, again, for customers who have variable users throughout the day or throughout the week, you can have multiple servers start, stop during the course of the day or the week, depending on the user load. Whenever more users log in, automatically more servers get started. When less users or the users who have logged in start logging off, the additional servers which were started start shutting down by themselves, right? And of course, it gives you a message, it gives users notification so that they are able to save their work and log off securely. The last one is for hybrid servers. If you have a customer who wants the Azure experience, but in an on-prem infrastructure, that is where Azure Stack HCI comes into place. And now Azure Virtual Desktop is supported on Azure Stack HCI. A quick comparison between Windows 365 and Azure Virtual Desktop. Azure Virtual Desktop is flexible. You have full control over the management of Azure Virtual Desktop. You can get both dedicated user and multi-user logins with Azure Virtual Desktop. There is no native self-service options like you saw in Windows 365. Assign a license and pretty much it's taken care of, right? In Azure Virtual Desktop, you basically have to set up and configure everything, right? Azure Virtual Desktop works with all Active Directory options currently available, whereas Windows 365 works with Azure AD and Windows AD does not work with Azure AD domain services. Windows 365 is local profile, no backup, no start on connect, whereas Azure Virtual Desktop is you have user profiles on a shared location. Backup is possible using backup service of Azure, or you can use any other product like Veeam or Acronis or any of those, and you definitely have auto scaling and start on connect. So there's a question saying, what is screen capture protection? So screen capture protection is, let's say if I'm doing this a presentation from a machine in Azure Virtual Desktop, I cannot open up this snipping tool, take a snippet like this and share it with any user, right? This option will not be possible if I use screen capture protection activated, right? So I will not be able to do this on an Azure Virtual Desktop machine. On a machine, an end user will not be able to do this. John, I hope that answers your question. Screen capture protection. So we looked at the costing comparison. In a nutshell, Azure Virtual Desktop sometimes is cheaper, sometimes is expensive. It completely depends on your end user, I would say, scenario. I'll just make it in a full screen mode. So we'll skip the demo of Azure Virtual Desktop as we are running short of time. I just wanted to quickly talk about offer running from Ingram, proof of concept. If you have customers who want to try and test Azure Virtual Desktop, we can fund that particular proof of concept. Please do get in touch with either me or Sam or one of your assigned sales reps from Ingram, and we will help you through this. These are some of the resources. If you have any questions, feel free to use the chat. Now, before we end the session, these are some questions which I have. So I would appreciate if you can answer it either in the chat or the Q&A window. I would prefer chat if you can answer them in the chat. Answer format is basically either or YN, whatever is your answer, right? So the first question is, can you resize Windows 365 Business, right? Business Cloud PC. Can you convert Windows 365 Business PC to a Windows 365 Enterprise PC? Okay. If I already use Windows 11 Pro or Windows 10 Pro on a device, am I eligible for Windows hybrid benefit? Now, this question is specific again to Windows 365, right? It has nothing to do with Azure Virtual Desktop. Last question: can multiple cloud PCs? What I mean by that is, can multiple Windows 365 licenses be assigned to a single user? Right. So I'll give you a couple of minutes time, review the questions, kindly answer them in the chat, and then we'll pick the user who's provided the right answer and provided the price for it. Still waiting for users to answer the question. Okay, so we have a couple of answers coming in. Okay, so let me answer these questions for you. Can I resize Windows 365 Business Cloud PC? Answer is no, you cannot resize Windows 365 Business. You can resize Windows 365 Enterprise though. Okay. Can I convert Windows 365 Business PC to Windows 365 Enterprise? The answer is no. You cannot switch plans. I mean, can you convert? Answer is yes, but you will lose all the data. Right? You basically have to remove the license, assign a license. You'll lose the data. Am I, if I already use Windows 10 Pro, am I eligible for Windows hybrid benefit? Answer is yes. Now, this is something that you'll also get discount on. Right? So if I'm not wrong, actually get 16% discount on the price, right? On the price. Can multiple cloud PCs be assigned to a single user? Answer is yes. You can assign multiple Windows 365 business or enterprise license to a single user. What is not possible is you cannot have multiple users assigned to a single license. That is not possible, right? So I hope that answers your questions. I hope that gives you more clarity on the features and functionality. So I think we are on time or a little over time. So thank you very much for taking our time and joining the session. I hope the session was helpful and informative. If you do have any questions, if you want us to follow up with you for any requirements, please do drop us an email. We'll be more than happy to get in touch with you and help you out with your queries. Thank you one and all for taking your time and joining. Have a great day ahead.